In 1919, every wrench in every mechanic's shop is one piece of steel, one handle, one socket, one size. 30 bolt sizes means 30 wrenches. 40 pounds of metal in a canvas roll. A plant manager in Milwaukee named Joseph Johnson looks at this and sees the fix. 5 handles. 10 removable sockets that snap on and off. One kit replaces the drawer. 5 do the work of 50. That idea will become a $4.7 billion company. 13,000 employees, 130 countries, and a relationship between a brand and its customers that resembles religion more than commerce. Joseph Johnson is not the first man to think about interchangeable sockets. The concept exists in engineering circles in the late 1910s. Walden Worcester manufactures socket sets. Blackhawk Manufacturing, where Johnson works as plant manager, begins selling its own interchangeable socket line in May of 1919. The idea is in the air the way the automobile itself was in the air 2 decades earlier. Multiple people can see the future at the same time. But seeing the future and selling it to mechanics are 2 different operations. Johnson understands something that Blackhawk and Walden do not. He understands that a mechanic will not buy a new kind of tool from a catalogue. A mechanic has to hold it. A mechanic has to feel the socket click onto the drive handle. He has to hear the snap, feel the lock, put a wrench on a bolt and pull. The sale happens in the mechanic's hand, not on a printed page. In 1920, Johnson and his colleague William Siderman leave Blackhawk Manufacturing and incorporate the Snap-on Wrench Company at 134 Reed Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The capital stock is $25,000. The entire product line is 5 drive handles and 10 sockets. The company name describes the mechanism. The sockets snap on. Johnson and Siderman do not open a showroom. They do not place advertisements in trade magazines and wait for orders. They hire salesmen. They give the salesmen tools. They send the salesmen into garages and repair shops and dealerships across the Midwest. And they tell them to do one thing. Put the tool in the mechanic's hand and let him use it. By December of 1920, 20 cities have branch offices. By 1923, the company publishes its first catalogue and secures its first patent, the No. 6 ratchet, an interchangeable ratchet adapter that Johnson himself designed. By 1925, 165 salesmen are walking into shops across the country with snap-on tools in their hands. The growth is not driven by advertising, by distribution deals, by retail partnerships. The growth is driven by one man handing a tool to another man, and the second man realizing that 5 tools just replaced 50. The sales pitch is the demonstration. The demonstration is the pitch. This is not a coincidence. This is the same sentence that describes Ackerman and Schmidt selling the MS6 in Stuttgart 2 years later. The same principle operates in both companies, on 2 continents, in 2 different trades, at the same moment in history. The best tool sells itself when it is placed in the hand of the man who needs it. The showroom is the workshop. The catalogue is the tool. The selling model that Johnson and Siderman build in the 1920s becomes, over the next century, the most distinctive distribution system in the history of hand tools. After World War II, a man named Newton Tarbell transforms the system. The company advertises for a military officer to organize and develop a larger sales force for the expected post-war boom. Tarbell is hired. He looks at the existing model, salesmen visiting mechanics with sample kits, and he pushes it further. He creates permanent routes, assigned territories, regular weekly visits. The salesman does not cold call, he builds a relationship. He shows up every Tuesday or every Thursday, same time, same parking spot outside the shop, and the mechanics know he is coming the way they know the mail carrier is coming. By 1945, every Snap-on salesman carries stock. He does not show a sample and then take an order. He carries the inventory on his person, in his car, ready to hand over on the spot. The mechanic sees the tool, holds the tool, and buys the tool in the same 5-minute conversation. No waiting for delivery. No wondering if the order will arrive. The tool goes from the salesman's case to the mechanic's drawer in the time it takes to write a receipt. Then the vans arrive. At some point in the late 1940s and into the 1950s, the walk-in van becomes the standard delivery vehicle for Snap-on's sales force. Each van is a mobile tool store. Shelves of wrenches, ratchets, sockets, screwdrivers, pliers, torque wrenches, specialty tools, diagnostic equipment. The driver parks outside the shop. The mechanics walk to the van, step inside and browse. They hold tools, they test ratchets, they pull drawers open on display cabinets. The experience is retail, but the location is the customer's own workplace. The store comes to the mechanic. The mechanic never leaves the job. By the time the van system matures, each Snap-on dealer carries between $50,000 and $200,000 worth of inventory. The dealer visits the same shops on the same day every week. He knows the mechanics by name. He knows what tools they already own. He knows which ones are wearing out. He offers to clean their previously purchased Snap-on tools every 6 months. And during the cleaning, he inspects the tools, identifies wear, and recommends replacements. The service is genuine. The upsell is built into the service. The two cannot be separated because they are the same act performed for the same reason. A worn-out ratchet should be replaced. The man selling the replacement is the same man who diagnosed the wear. In 1990, the system formalizes into a franchise model. Snap-on becomes the first mobile tool company to offer franchise ownership. The dealer buys a franchise, buys a van, buys initial inventory, and operates as an independent business on an assigned list of calls. The brand provides the tools, the credit systems, the training, and the reputation. The franchisee provides the relationship, the route, the weekly presence outside the shop door. Today, roughly 3,000 Snap-on franchise vans operate across the United States alone. The vans are custom-built by LDV, a company that has designed tool trucks for Snap-on for nearly 50 years. They have smooth aluminium flooring, 32-inch monitors, power tool display walls, 2,000-pound lift gates for loading tool cabinets, and merchandising systems designed to make a 20-foot vehicle feel like a showroom. The franchise investment ranges from $172,000 to $411,000. The franchise fee itself is capped at $16,000, but the inventory, the van, the insurance, the route, and the operating capital push the total far beyond. No other tool company in the world sells this way, at this scale. Matco runs vans, Mac Tools runs vans, Cornwell runs vans. All of them are following the model that Snap-on built. The weekly visit, the personal relationship, the rolling inventory, the immediate delivery. Every mobile tool dealer in America is a variation on the theme that Johnson and Siderman established when they put a socket wrench in a mechanic's hand and watched him buy it on the spot. The franchise is not without risk. Each year, between 250 and 300 Snap-on franchises are reacquired by the company. With roughly 3,000 total franchisees in the United States, that is close to a 10% annual turnover rate. The franchisees who succeed tend to be the ones who understand that they are not selling tools. They are selling the visit, the relationship, the reliability of showing up at the same shop, at the same time every single week for years until the mechanics on that route cannot imagine buying a ratchet from anyone else. The franchisees who fail tend to be the ones who bought a van and expected the brand to do the selling. The brand opens the door, the relationship keeps it open. The question that every person outside the automotive trades asks is the same question. Why are the tools so expensive? A Snap-on 3/8-inch ratchet costs more than a comparable ratchet from any mainstream tool brand. A Snap-on combination wrench set costs more than a comparable set from Craftsman, from Gear Wrench, from Tecton, from Husky. A Snap-on tool cabinet, the big rolling workstation that sits behind a mechanic for his entire career, can cost $15,000 for a mid-range model, $30,000 for a large EPQ series unit, and over $40,000 for the top of the line. A fully equipped Snap-on tool setup, box and tools for a working automotive technician can easily exceed $50,000. Some reach $80,000 or more. The pricing is not an accident. It is not the result of inefficiency, legacy costs, or corporate greed in the conventional sense. The pricing is a strategic architecture, and it rests on three pillars that reinforce each other in a closed loop. The first pillar is quality, and it is real. Snap-on tools are made in the United States. The wrenches are forged in Elizabethton, Tennessee. The ratchets are manufactured in Milwaukee. The power tools come from Murphy, North Carolina. The tool storage is built in Algona, Iowa. The torque products are assembled in City of Industry, California. 15 manufacturing facilities in the United States. Snap-on holds more than 3,100 patents. The flank drive wrench design, patented in 1965, solved a problem that every mechanic understood. Conventional sockets grip a bolt at the corners, and under high torque, the corners round off. The flank drive geometry grips the bolt on the flats, distributing force across a wider surface, reducing corner damage and allowing higher torque without slipping. The patent expired decades ago. Every competitor now copies the principle. Snap-on invented it. The second pillar is the warranty, and it is also real. Snap-on hand tools carry a lifetime warranty. A broken ratchet is replaced on the spot by the franchisee on his next visit. No receipt required, no proof of purchase, no shipping a tool to a warehouse, and waiting 3 weeks. The van rolls up on Thursday, the mechanic hands over the broken tool, and the franchisee hands back a new one. For a professional mechanic who depends on his tools to earn a living, the difference between a 3-week warranty turnaround and a same-day replacement is the difference between losing income and not losing income. The cost of the tool includes the cost of the warranty, and the warranty is delivered by the same man who sold the tool on the same schedule in the same parking lot. The third pillar is credit, and this is where the architecture becomes something more complicated than quality and service. Snap-on's financial services division generated $100.5 million in revenue in the fourth quarter of 2024 alone. For the full year, financial services brought in over $395 million. This is not a side business. This is a structural component of how Snap-on operates. There are two ways a mechanic finances a Snap-on purchase. The first is through Snap-on Credit LLC, the company's formal lending arm based in Libertyville, Illinois. This works like any financing agreement. Credit application, credit check, signed contract, disclosed interest rate, fixed payment schedule. Interest rates reported by customers range from 15% to 30%. The second method is truck credit, extended directly by the franchisee. No application, no credit check, no signed agreement. The dealer knows the mechanic, sees him every week, and extends credit based on the relationship. The mechanic pays weekly in cash when the van arrives. The payments are small. $20 a week, $30, $50. The balance floats. A mechanic buys a ratchet, starts paying it off at $10 a week, and before the ratchet is paid off, he buys a torque wrench. The torque wrench adds $15 a week. Before the torque wrench is paid off, he needs an impact driver. The balance never goes down because the buying never stops. The payments are constant and the debt is perpetual. The truck visit is the mechanism that holds it together. The mechanic has to come to the van every week to make his payment. When he steps onto the van to hand over $30 in cash, he is standing inside a mobile store surrounded by tools he does not yet own. The payment is the foot traffic. The debt is the reason for the visit. The visit is the opportunity for the next sale. The next sale increases the debt. The increased debt ensures the next visit. Online forums are filled with mechanics who describe this cycle. A young technician starts his career, needs tools to work, and the Snap-on van is the most convenient source. The tools are excellent. The warranty is immediate. The credit is easy. The weekly payments feel manageable. 5 years later, the technician has $15,000 in Snap-on debt, a tool cabinet he is still paying off, and a weekly payment that never seems to shrink because every time the balance drops, a new purchase fills the gap. The industry has a saying for it. Mechanics joke that the three certainties in life are death, taxes, and Snap-on payments. The joke works because it is not entirely a joke. In automotive trade schools, instructors warn students about tool truck debt the way financial advisors warn clients about credit card debt. The mechanism is the same: low minimums, high balances, the convenience of the purchase, the invisibility of the interest, and the social pressure of working alongside colleagues whose toolboxes are already full. The young technician sees the senior mechanic's snap-on cabinet, red and chrome and loaded with every socket in the catalogue, and he wants what the senior mechanic has. The van driver knows this. The van driver was trained on this. The first visit is a ratchet and a socket set. The second visit is a torque wrench. By the 6th month, the cabinet conversation starts. The cabinet costs $8,000. The weekly payment goes up by $40. The technician earns $600 a week. The math is tight. But the cabinet is there on the truck and the driver can have it delivered by Friday. Snap-on is aware of this dynamic. The company's own materials advise franchisees on maintaining customer credit balances at appropriate levels. The system is not hidden. It is not illegal. It is, by any structural definition, a closed economic ecosystem in which the manufacturer, the lender, the retailer, and the debt collector are all the same entity, and the customer, the mechanic, interacts with all four of them through a single person who parks outside his shop every Thursday morning. The fairness question depends on who you ask. A veteran technician with a paid-off box and 30 years of snap-on tools in it will tell you the investment was worth every dollar. He made more money because his tools were better. He lost fewer fasteners. He broke fewer bolts. He finished jobs faster. The tools paid for themselves. A technician who left the trade after 3 years, still owing $9,000 on a credit account for tools he no longer uses, will tell you something different. Both of them are telling the truth. The system serves the career mechanic and punishes the one who leaves. The tools themselves have never been the controversy. The tools are good. In many categories, they are the best available. This is not disputed by competitors, by independent reviewers, or by the mechanics who use them. A snap-on ratchet feels different in the hand from a lesser ratchet. The tolerances are tighter. The action is smoother. The engagement is more precise. A mechanic who has used both a snap-on 80-tooth ratchet and a mid-range competitor's ratchet can tell the difference blindfolded, by feel alone, in the first half turn. The tool storage is built to a standard that most competitors cannot match. The drawer slides on a high-end snap-on cabinet are engineered to hold 100 pounds per drawer and glide on bearings that feel frictionless at full load. The cabinets are welded steel, not bolted sheet metal. The casters are rated for the total weight of a fully loaded professional setup, which can exceed 2,000 pounds. The finish is automotive-grade paint baked on with clear coat. The lock mechanisms are keyed. The organizational systems, foam inserts, dividers and shadow boards are designed with the same precision as the tools they hold. In the 1980s, Snap-on became the sole supplier of tools to NASA for the Space Shuttle program. The selection was not sentimental. NASA does not choose tools based on brand loyalty or marketing. NASA chooses tools based on failure rates, material specifications, and performance under conditions that have no margin for error. A tool failure in orbit is not an inconvenience. It is a potential catastrophe. Snap-on met the standard. The tools went to space. The flank drive design is one innovation, but the company holds 3,100 patents across its full portfolio. The first digital oscilloscope for automotive diagnostics. The first air ratchet introduced in 1970. The ratcheting screwdriver, the EPIC tool storage system. Snap-on is not a company that bought its reputation. It built the reputation the same way it builds its tools, through engineering, iteration, and an obsession with the professional end user that has not wavered in 105 years. The company survives the Great Depression by doing what every durable American manufacturer does during that decade. It adapts, it contracts, and it holds on. In 1931, the company's president, Stanton Palmer, dies. The business is carrying debt and expanding faster than its cash flow can sustain. Snap-on turns to one of its principal creditors, the Forged Steel Products Company, run by William E. Myers. Myers becomes president of Snap-on. The founder, Joseph Johnson, stays on as vice president and treasurer. William Siderman becomes secretary and works manager. The company stabilizes. In 1939, Myers dies. Joseph Johnson, now approaching 50, takes over as president of both Snap-on and Forged Steel Products. He runs the company through the war. During World War II, military contracts consume the company's manufacturing capacity. Tool shortages hit the civilian market. Johnson makes a decision that defines the company's relationship with its sales force for the next 80 years. He releases available tool stock to the salesmen even when supply is limited, so that the salesmen can maintain relationships with their civilian customers during the years when production is diverted to the military. The logic is simple: the war will end, the mechanics will still be there. The salesman who kept showing up during the shortages will be the first man they buy from when production resumes. By 1945, every salesman is carrying stock and making immediate deliveries. The infrastructure for the van system is being laid. Johnson has been with the company for 25 years. He has survived the departure from Blackhawk, the founding scramble, the Depression, a leadership crisis, and a world war. He continues as president until his retirement in 1959. The decades after the war are the decades of expansion. In 1956, Snap-on acquires the Weidenhoff Corporation in Algona, Iowa, and begins manufacturing tool storage cabinets, bringing the toolbox inside the same ecosystem as the tools. In 1959, Judson Engineering in Natick, Massachusetts joins the portfolio. The product line widens from wrenches and sockets into diagnostic equipment, voltmeters, ammeters, engine analyzers. The automobile is becoming more complex. The mechanic who once needed only wrenches now needs instruments. Snap-on follows the mechanic's needs the way the van follows the mechanic's route. In 1965, Snap-on opens its first branch in the United Kingdom. The same year, the company receives a patent that will define its reputation in hand tools for the next 60 years. The flank drive design, patent number 3,273,430, is awarded after years of legal dispute. The geometry is subtle, but the effect is not. A conventional socket grips a hex bolt at the 6 corners. Under heavy torque, the force concentrates at these corners and rounds them off. The flank drive socket grips the bolt on the flats, between the corners. The force spreads across a wider surface. The bolt does not round. The socket does not slip. The mechanic pulls harder and the tool holds. Every socket manufacturer in the world eventually copies the principle once the patent expires, but for 2 decades only Snap-on makes it. Sales grow from $66 million in 1969 to $373 million in 1979. Profits grow from $6 million to $42 million in the same decade. The worldwide sales force exceeds 3,000. In 1978, Snap-on stock is listed on the New York Stock Exchange for the first time. The company that started with $25,000 in capital and 10 sockets is now a publicly traded corporation on the NYSE, and it still sells its tools the same way it sold them in 1920. One man, face to face, putting the tool in the customer's hand. Joseph Johnson dies on October 15th, 1986, at the age of 92. He lives long enough to see his company reach $1 billion in annual sales, which it achieves in 1987, 1 year after his death. He lives long enough to see the van network grow to thousands of routes. He lives long enough to see the tools go to NASA. He lives long enough to see the brand become something more than a tool company, something closer to an institution, a word that mechanics use not to describe a product but to describe a standard. He does not live to see the company reach $4.7 billion. The difference between Snap-on and every other tool company in this series is the difference between the story of a company that lost something and the story of a company that kept everything. Flex invented the angle grinder and lost its independence to Chervon. Fine invented the electric drill and kept its independence, but watched every competitor clone its oscillating multi-tool the day the patent expired. Stanley merged with Black & Decker and became a conglomerate that swallows other brands whole. Craftsman was sold by Sears to Stanley Black & Decker and is now manufactured in facilities that have nothing to do with the original company. Porter Cable passed through so many owners that the brand is functionally a label applied to tools made by whoever currently holds the rights. Snap-on has been publicly traded since 1978. It has been headquartered in Kenosha, Wisconsin since 1930, when it moved from Milwaukee to an 11-acre site on the outskirts of town. It still manufactures in the United States. It still operates its own franchise network. It still designs its own tools. It has never been acquired by a conglomerate. It has never been hollowed out and resold. It has never been moved offshore. The company that Joseph Johnson and William Siderman incorporated in 1920 with $25,000 in capital stock at 134 Reed Street in Milwaukee is the same company in the same state doing the same thing for the same customer 105 years later. In the tool industry, this is almost unheard of. The reason Snap-on survives where others are consumed is the same reason the tools are expensive. The van network, the franchise system, the weekly relationship, the credit operation, the warranty, the manufacturing base. These are not separate strategies. They are a single integrated system in which each component depends on and reinforces every other. The van cannot exist without the franchise. The franchise cannot exist without the margin on the tools. The margin on the tools cannot exist without the quality that justifies the price. The quality cannot be maintained without the manufacturing base. The manufacturing base cannot be funded without the revenue. The revenue depends on the van. Take any single component out of the loop and the system breaks. This is why Snap-on has not been acquired. An acquirer would have to buy the entire system, not just the brand. And the system only works if every component remains intact, runs on the same schedule, and serves the same customer. You cannot strip mine this company the way you can strip mine a brand that sells through retail. There is no retail to redirect. There is no distribution to consolidate. There's only a man in a van parked outside a shop handing a ratchet to a mechanic who has been waiting for it all week. The mechanic who buys Snap-on tools in 2026 is not buying a wrench. He is buying membership in a system that has operated continuously for longer than most countries have had their current governments. The wrench is excellent. The wrench is also a key that unlocks access to a weekly visit, an immediate warranty, a line of credit, a personal relationship with a dealer who knows his name and his toolbox and his preferences, and a standard of quality that has not dropped in a century. Whether that membership is worth the price is a question that every mechanic answers differently. A technician at a high-volume dealership, flat rate, working 50 hours a week, billing for speed and precision, will answer differently than a weekend hobbyist who turns a bolt once a month. A 22-year-old apprentice financing his first toolbox at 25% interest will answer differently than a 50-year-old master technician who paid off his last Snap-on bill 20 years ago and now buys one tool at a time, in cash when the old one finally wears out. The system does not treat all of them the same. The system charges all of them the same. The difference is whether the price is a cost or an investment, and that distinction depends entirely on how many bolts the mechanic turns per day and how much each bolt is worth. Joseph Johnson saw a mechanic carrying 30 wrenches and thought he could build 5 handles and 10 sockets that did the same work. The sockets snapped onto the handles. He named the company after the sound they made. Snap-on. The name is the mechanism. The mechanism is the product. The product is the company. The company is the system. The system is 105 years old. It has outlived its founders, its original factory, its original city, 2 world wars, 12 recessions, the rise of big box retail, the collapse of Sears, the globalization of manufacturing, the import of cheap tools from every low-cost producer on earth, and the entry of a dozen competitors who sell comparable quality at lower prices through conventional retail channels. It has outlived all of that because it does not compete on any single dimension. It competes on the system, the van, The visit, the credit, the quality, the warranty, the relationship. The system is the moat, and the moat is the system. Somewhere today, in a shop in Kenosha or Knoxville or Bakersfield or the Bronx, a Snap-on van parks in the lot. The door opens, a mechanic steps inside, makes his weekly payment, picks up a new 10mm socket to replace the one he lost last Wednesday, and steps back out. The transaction takes 4 minutes. The relationship behind it has lasted 15 years. He does not think about Joseph Johnson. He does not think about 134 Reed Street in Milwaukee in 1920, or Blackhawk Manufacturing, or William Siderman, or the moment a man first watched a socket snap onto a drive handle and understood that the 30 wrench problem was solved forever. He thinks about the bolt he has to pull next. He reaches into his toolbox and picks up the ratchet. It is a Snap-on. He would not consider anything else.